All right, so you're growing all this tree in your house. So what takes place after this?
Well, I had a closet going, so it wasn't that much, but I was learning the basics and I was getting my feet wet. So I'm back in LA, and I got a bunch of friends that have the packs, and they're like, "Yo, we need to start moving these shits out of town." And through my Colorado connections, I ended up meeting some people in Florida. I had some homies in Hawaii, in New York. So we started taking the packs and shipping them out there. And I would fly out there. I would do the old touchdown pass where I received it myself. I'd go there, you know what I mean? Grab the packs and make it happen. Bring the cash back, and we started making some money like that. And having fun while we were doing it. You know, we were partying. We were fucking off the money. You know, we go to the cities and we would party with the money that we got, the profit, a lot of drinking and drugs and girls and shit like that, having fun.
And with that lifestyle of going out of town, you don't always, there's some discrepancies with the money sometimes. Sometimes you lose out. So, did you ever find yourself in a bad situation or a loss that you just couldn't recover from happen?
Oh yeah, bro. Like,
Or any crazy
a lot of
situations?
shit happens, bro. You know, the packs don't make it. The buyer backs out. Um, you could get trying to get the money back is hectic. You might, there's all sorts of shit that could happen when you're doing that, and you have to receive the packs. You got to ship them out. There's a lot of moving parts with that. And yeah, I mean, I could get into like, you know, money being stolen. We bring a couple girls up to the hotel. You know what I mean? And next thing you know, there's an iPad and a couple grand missing, and they're running out the fucking hotel. You know what I mean? So that shit, a lot of shit could happen when you're going out of town, man. It happens to the best of us. You know, you make mistakes. That's why getting intoxicated and doing these jobs is not good because you're slipping. You're not on your game. Um, so but at the same time, the reward was big back then. We make quite a bit off of each pound, about $1,000 off each pound, man. So you could do the math: 5 pounds, 5 grand. We're in Hawaii. We're on the beach. We're in Miami. We're fucking in the Big Apple. So the shit was fucking fun at the same time if we got right. But sometimes if the post office intercepts it, you take a big loss, which I will definitely get into here in a little bit because that plays into the story for sure. Um, and how I transitioned into mushrooms and out of the cannabis industry.
So, what goes on after this?
So to make a profit, you got to go find the pounds for the cheapest price. And so at the time, a lot of shit coming from the hill up north in Northern California was your best bet to score a good deal and turn a big profit. So my homie, good friend of mine, he was a boss. He was a plug slash a good friend. He said, "Yo, my boy just got out of prison up north. He was up there growing weed, got into some shit up there, got in like a bar fight, fucking crap, blew a car up and shit, and got caught with a bunch of money and some guns, and he got locked up for a couple years. But he was getting out, and he was already up there, and he was on probation, so he had to stay up there. So my boy's like,
Up where?
it was in
In my.
Ukiah, in like Willits, Ukiah, Willits, Garberville, that little section of Northern California, the Emerald Triangle, which is like Humboldt, and all the little cities that I named, and a whole bunch of stuff in between. But is where at the time a lot of marijuana was being produced for the whole world, the whole country. It was the spot, and it was a beautiful thing. The history of that place is special. If you don't know, a lot of the hippies ended up moving up there during the '60s and stuff to get away from the cities and do their own thing, grow cannabis and keep it natural and get away from society that was hating on them. And some of the best weed was grown up there and produced and cultivated and created up in those hills. It's a magical place. I still love it to this day. The energy up there is amazing. Now, also, the weed grows great right there. If you look at the hemisphere, and the latitude and the lines of the earth. Afghanistan, where Kush is grown, in the Hindu mountains, it goes around to Northern California. It's in the same line. So these two places are known for growing the best cannabis at the time, before indoor cultivation was a big thing. So, besides the history of that, at the time the pounds were cracking up there. My homie's homie just got out of jail, so he's like, we're gonna go up there, we're gonna talk to him and see what we could do. So we ended up going up there. I met this dude. We'll call him Seaweed. You know what I mean? My boy Seaweed. So Seaweed got out of prison and he plugged us with the packs, and we started making moves up north and getting them for a very good ticket and sending them out all over, Hawaii, Miami, all the places that we had. And so we were getting money like that, you know what I mean? And you definitely got to know how to send these things. That's like what we were just talking about how you could take some losses and shit like that. You got to know how to do it. You got to know how to seal them up right. You got to know how to send them.
Yeah, no need to go into that. You don't want to ruin someone's...
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that, but
someone might be...
Yeah, the details of that. So that dude Seaweed, in the long run, just a side note, because the story has to do with drugs and drugs destroying people's lives and why these mushrooms are so good and how they save people. The weed industry ended up drying up years later after that, and he had no choice but to get into some other shit to make money. He met some cartel dudes up there, and he ended up going a really bad route and started selling hard ass drugs online in the black market. And he had one of the largest
Wait up, rewind. You jumped from one thing another, from going up north, doing business, and now you're jumping to this dude Seaweed.
Yeah, Seaweed. Just a side note, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he ended up later on in life. He got 3 life sentences for selling hard drugs on the dark web. One of the biggest dark web busts in the federal agency's history of conception of the federal agency. And so, you meet these characters in this game, in this way of life, and it's just interesting. So I just wanted to drop a little knowledge on that.
So what happens after you're going up north constantly?
So we're going up north, doing our thing, making money. We're partying, we're spending all the money, drinking and doing all that shit. And we ended up taking some losses. I lost some big boxes in the mail, and so I ended up owing a lot of money to my connection.
All right, so in this period, are you stacking, or are you just basically blowing all the money you're making and partying?
I'm blowing all the money. I have no financial literacy at the time. I'm young, I'm dumb, and I'm just having a good time, and learning. Pretty much. And I'm drinking and I'm using and doing all that shit.
So you're just partying all the profits?
Yeah, partying all the profits. No plan for the future, just living in the moment, the fast life,
Do you think that's a problem with most people, that they're not taught financial literacy from a young age?
Yes, it is definitely an issue. I preach nowadays to everyone I know that they need to become financially literate and study this, because it's such an important thing in life. This knowledge is priceless. It could change your life, and it's something everybody should know. And the information's out there now. With the internet, you can get free books. You can listen to these audio books. I can name a few for you. Richest Man in Babylon's a good one. Rich Dad Poor Dad, whatever. There's a lot of them out there. But just becoming financial literate is very important.
And that's not really taught too much in school. They concentrate on all types of stuff that you don't even need later on in life.
Yeah, they want to make you a fucking worker, dude. The school is designed to make you a factory worker. This is a known fact that the Rockefellers set in motion that type of an educational system. And so, I had to learn the hard way, you know what I mean? And take big losses and live a life of struggles and stuff like that, and find out that I need to start studying this stuff and become knowledgeable in it. And through my trials and tribulations, I was able to do that, luckily. But no one taught me that. I had no role models, I had no positive role models in my life. I just had the environment and the group of people that I knew, which I love them to death, but a lot of them were just doing the same shit I was doing.
So you're partying your losses, and you take this. Next step is you take this huge loss, and then
Yes,
what happens?
take a huge loss, end up losing all my clients, end up losing, a couple big boxes that put me in debt, and then my girl ended up leaving me too. And so she left. She ended up dipping out. I was with her for 13 years, and she took all the shit. She took all the furniture. She took everything. So now I'm left with bills to pay and no fucking game plan of what I'm gonna do. So I gotta start figuring shit out. Now at the time, I'm so stressed out. I come across a documentary called Awaken on Netflix, which I was out of shape and I was very unhealthy from all the partying and shit. So I wanted to start, and I'm going through all this shit, all this turmoil. So I want to start bettering myself. I want to get healthy. I want to start getting smart and figuring out how to, get out of this situation. So it was on a person called Pramhansa Yogananda, and he wrote a book called Autobiography of a Yogi, and it was Steve Jobs' favorite book. When Steve Jobs died, the only book on his iPhone, his iPad or his computer, whatever he had at the time, was this book. He would read it once a year. Elvis was into this shit. It is a very powerful book. And anyways, the DVD talked about, I thought it was going to be talking about health and yoga and stuff, but it was really speaking about God. And I never heard anyone talk about how much they love God. And so this is my first taste of spirituality, which plays into the whole mushroom thing and my whole path. We're going to get into that. So I came across this. So I started getting a little taste for like a better life, like a higher taste. So I got a little bit of this yoga knowledge, and I'm like, yo, this is really interesting. Let me get the book. I start reading it slowly. But I need to figure out a game plan. What I'm going to do. How am I going to pay my rent? I can't even eat. I don't have any money. I remember like going to the bar and just like eating chips and salsa and shit and having the homies buy me beers. It was horrible. It was a bad time. And so I had one friend, we'll call him Martian, because he's from New Mexico and he always goes to Vegas, so we make fun of him. He's like an alien. We call him like Martian or alien. So this fool Martian was like, yo, bro, I got some coke coming from New Mexico, man, and I'll front you a little bit of it, and you could pay me later because I know you're hurting. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a way I can make some money, dude. So he fronted me a little sack of coke. I flipped it real quick, and I got some money in my pocket. So I'm like, okay, shit, well, maybe I should start doing this for now, And so there was another dude that I knew who was a good friend of all my friends. He's been selling the Yola for a long time, a real professional. We'll call him Jose. And so I went up to Jose, and I took that little profit because he had better stuff, and I said, yo, let me get a little something, and I started working with him. And when I started working with him, he had the fire, so I ended up started making money and get that going. So then I was able to take some of that coke money and buy a couple grow lights. So now I've got my apartment, I got like 3 lights in there. I'm selling coke and I'm growing bud again, and then I was able to get some really good clones, some Diamond Kush from the San Fernando Valley from a real reputable source. Real good source, and I was growing the fire, and so I started doing that, and I ended up telling Jose, the coke plug, I said, bro, why don't we start a weed delivery service, because we can make some money doing that. He said he was down, so we invested in it, and we started a little side business, selling weed, a little weed delivery service. So I'm growing, I'm selling blow, and I got a little weed delivery service. But I'm still partying, I'm still an idiot, and I'm still fucking up, And also at the time, my mom's still in the streets. She ran out of the rehab. She's still in the streets, so it's a hectic time. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm gonna do,
All right, so you're doing all 3 of these things. but you're still partying. So what takes place?
Okay, so I'm living in this apartment. I'm trapping hard out of this spot. It was just like a wild fucking place, bro. I had lights going. The whole apartment smelled like just kush. I'm selling blow. I got girls over there. All the homies were wilding out.
Wait up, wait up,
It was
wait
a
up, wait
wild
up,
fucking. It was a trap apartment like you'd never seen. It was wild.
wait up.
How it didn't get raided, I have no idea.
So, so you're saying the smell is reeking from the apartment?
Yeah.
And this is this a big building? Is it a small building?
So the way I got away with it was like a one building, a middle building, and a third building. And for some reason, the wind would literally like take the smell from my place and push it to the front of the building. I don't know how that should happen, but in the front of the building, it would just be humming the whole fucking half the block up. But like right when you get to my place, you wouldn't really smell it, or you would smell it downstairs. But I was smoking too, so you could smell my fresh smoke and shit. But like the main smells, for some reason, got pushed to the front of the building. It was wonderful. It was a crazy fucking thing that happened.
Yeah, because most people don't know the smell that when you're smoking weed is different from when you're growing.
Definitely, especially
So it's two different things.
When you trim it and dry it, bro, it just hum the whole when it was harvest time, the whole spot would just be humming, dude. But it was cool, like the neighbors would chill, and I was able to get away with it somehow. Grace of God, it was a wild time. So during this time, my ego's inflated. I think I'm the fucking man. I'm doing good and shit, and I'm having fun. And my homie, it was like my good friend, one of my brothers. He was like, "Yo, bro, I got some mushrooms. Do you want some?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, bring them through, dude. Like let's do this." So he brought me like, I don't know, 2 ace. They were like 2 giant mushrooms. And like I think back, they were probably penis envies, I believe. Possibly, I don't know what kind they were, but he ended up bringing them through, and I ate them, and I was laughing, I was having a good time, and then everybody left, and I was tripping, and so I walked in my bathroom and I looked in the mirror, dude, and I looked in my eyes, bro, and I just seen like I had this vision. First of all, I could see what I really looked like. I was fucking overweight. My skin was all fucked up. I looked like shit from partying, which I thought I didn't. I thought I was the man. And I realized that I was not doing good. Very unhealthy. And then I had this vision of like my soul being a temple, and it was broken down. It was dark. It was broken. There was like graffiti all over it, and like puddles of water, just like a broken down abandoned temple. And and there was demons all in there. I know this shit sounds crazy, but then there was like someone ran through there like a knight with a big fucking flaming torch, and it was like chasing them out. And it was like I had like a thought that told me like, you need to rebuild your temple, you need to change your life, and you need to turn your temple into a beautiful lit filled temple where God could dwell in.
And this is all on the mushrooms while looking in the mirror.
This is on the mushrooms looking in the mirror.
All right, so I'm gonna hone in on something real quick because you're hitting on something really good.
Yes.
So do you think sometimes, because I've had somewhat of a similar experience, and not seeing really how I really look, I think sometimes when we're under these substances, we see something, we're living in a facade, almost like a mask.
Yes.
We're seeing something else, but that's not what's really there.
Correct.
And we really look and behave like someone else when we're on these substances.
Yes.
And then the mushrooms brings it out and shows you the truth. In this instance.
Yes. So plant medicines of all sorts are known for doing this. They give you a whole different perspective on what you really look like and what you're really doing. You're in your zone every day, you're in your program, and you think that you know what you're doing, and you really have tunnel vision, and then these things give you an outside perspective, and really they show you the truth. Because the truth was, my ego was inflated. I thought I was the fucking man, but the truth was I was unhealthy, out of shape, skin all fucked up. I looked like shit, and I was going down the wrong path. And so the mushroom showed me the truth, you know? And the next day, I was like, that's fucking crazy. The next day I woke up and I said, I'm fucking growing these things, bro. I was like, that was an amazing experience. I want to grow them. I didn't know how to grow them, but I knew how to grow weed. And so I was like, I'm going to start growing these shits. So I called my boy, my plug at the time, Jose, and I said, yo, bro, we're going to start growing these things, dude. Like, I need you to invest in this shit. And he's like, he was down. He said, figure it out. So for 2 months or a month and a half, all I did was watch Terrence McKenna videos. Now, Terrence McKenna is an author. He's a philosopher. He was from the 60s counterculture era. He went to Berkeley, and he wrote a bunch of books. And he wrote the first book on cultivating psilocybin mushrooms. He also wrote the first book where he documented his trip to the Amazon rainforest, where he ingested a bunch of mushrooms with his brother and his friends. And it's a really good book called True Hallucinations by Terrence McKenna. He's written all sorts of books called Food of the Gods that breaks down the history of plant medicine use and drugs with human beings. That goes back 60,000 years from shamanism. He basically has a master's degree in shamanism, history, philosophy. He was a very smart and educated person.
He always has. He also has some very wild theories on evolution too.
Yeah, so he came up with the stoned ape theory. I believe he's the one who came up with that, the stoned ape theory, where we were apes and we ingested these psilocybin mushrooms and our brains expanded rapidly. So they don't know what the missing link is, why our brains expanded in such a fast pace during a certain time. And they believe it's because, our diets, we started ingesting these mushrooms, which ended up giving us all sorts of benefits and creating, human beings.
Well, that's what he believes.
There's a lot of evidence that, saying that that's true. It's a theory, but it's a very good theory.
His theory is based on, because they can't find the link where it goes from ape and these different Neanderthal states to the actual man.
Yeah,
can't find that.
They want to say aliens came and tinkered with us. No, dude, we started ingesting these mushrooms. Now, we were in the African Sierras at the time. It was a forest. It started drying up and becoming grassland, so we had to move out. We started tracking cattle. Now, we either were, they say, flipping the cow patties and eating bugs, or we came across the mushrooms and just ate them straight. Either way, we started ingesting them, which gave us better accuracy for throwing, eye-hand coordination, and hunting, which made us better hunters. It gave us speech and communication skills. It gave us religion, spirituality, shamanism, and it made us want to mate more. So we're mating, we're hunting, we're speaking, and we're starting to form these religious ideas and spirituality. We're changing from like Neanderthal into a modern human being. To sum it up, in a nutshell.
All right, so you engage in starting this process. You're listening to all these Terrence McKenna and reading his books. So what takes place after that?
So he talked a lot about, he broke down the mushroom cultivation. He broke down spirituality. He broke down history. So now I'm getting into the spirituality and the whole, what the mushrooms do for you and all the benefits and everything that comes with it. So now I'm learning about like the actual mushrooms and their energy and all that stuff. And so I'm ready to grow, man. So I told my boy Jose, I started so there really wasn't, let me go back. There really wasn't any knowledge, like information out there on how to grow these things. There was a website called Shroomery, but all that shit made no sense to me at the time because I didn't know anything. There was a few videos on YouTube, but very little. And not like nowadays. There was like one Willie Michael video maybe. I think he just came out like with one video, or something like that. And there was a few little videos. So I just picked all the information I can. And, I ended up talking to my plug, Jose, and he had a small little place where we could grow these things. And we bought the materials that we needed, and we got to work. And we were able to put together a few tents. We got some mono tubs, which are, plastic totes that people grow these things in. And we ordered some spores online from a spore dealership, a spore dealer. And we got them sent to us, and we did the damn thing. And we started going. And it was tough at first. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember, so they used grains, whole oats or rye berries, to grow the spores out on. This would be before I got into egg. This is for the mycologists, if you don't know how to grow mushrooms. This is before I knew how to use agar. We would just take a spore syringe and shoot it into a sterilized glass jar of rye berries. And, I'd be shaking them up and just breaking the jars and cutting my hand and bleeding all over the place and burning myself on the pressure cookers that you use to sterilize this shit. And it was wild, But we were dedicated, and we were going to get through it, and we were going to make it happen. So we started doing that. And I knew a little bit from growing weed, so I knew about temperatures and lighting, and it has to be on a similar light schedule to cannabis. It has to be in a similar temperature range. So I knew a little bit just about cultivation, setting timers and lights and shit like that. And so we were able to kind of get it going. The first ones we got going were Cambodians and golden teachers. And so we cracked out a few mono tubs, and we ended up harvesting a couple ounces. And I was so excited. I was like, it was the most exciting thing ever to see these things actually grow. I said, I need to eat them right now. So I looked online, and they said you could eat them fresh. But, they're 90% water, so you got to do the math. So I said, okay, I want to eat a half an eighth, which is 1.5 grams. So I'm going to eat 15 grams of wet, and thinking that was going to be a half eighth. And I don't know if those numbers are wrong or what, dude, but I ate that shit, and I almost had to call my boy Jose to come save me, dude, because I was so fucking faded. And if you eat them wet, I believe there's a few different alkaloids in the mushrooms. Psilocybin, psilocin. There's a whole bunch of them, but the main two that you hear about are psilocybin and psilocin. And I believe if they're wet, there's more psilocin, which is closer to a DMT trip, I believe. And so it's wild when you eat them wet. They taste really good. They taste kind of like fruits. And they rocked me, man. I was on a good one, but it was a good experience, and I was happy to have grown my own mushrooms and tripped on them. It was pretty cool.
So it's not as simple as you said, right? So you cut your hand, you're coming into these different hurdles doing it.
Oh yeah.
How many hurdles would you say you stumbled upon?
I mean,
and still kept going.
I've been stumbling upon hurdles for 10 years. This shit never stops. This is mushrooms are the second hardest crop to grow of all the crops there are. This is an actual farming statistic. The first one is strawberries, and the second one is mushrooms, and they base this on how much work you have to do and the chances of a successful crop.
Wait up, so strawberries and growing mushrooms are similar?
Growing strawberries is a very hard and tedious job to do to get a good result and to get your money's worth, pretty much. So for you to have a successful crop, which would be grow a crop, harvest it, and get the final product, strawberries are number one. You have to do the most work, and they're the hardest to get a nice final product, and mushrooms are number two. This is an actual farming statistic. And so, like I said, it's based on how much work you got to do and the chances of a successful crop, because there's so many things that could go wrong throughout the life cycle of the mushroom or the strawberry.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of hurdles. And now there's all this information, and there's all these people that will do a lot of the work for you. There's companies now, but back then there was none of this shit. And so at the time, I didn't even know where to sell a pound of mushrooms at. I didn't even know how much a pound of mushrooms went for. Like, no one was growing pounds back then. So I assumed, I said, you know what? Weed at the time was $2,000. I'm gonna sell these things for $1,000. And so I just made a fucking price up. Turned out that was pretty much the price point at the time.
Yeah, but they used to go for $1,000 to $1,400
Yeah,
back in
that
the
so
day?
that was we'll get into
Because they
that.
always ran hand in hand with marijuana.
Yeah, well, yeah, at the time, but we didn't know any. There was no real chocolate companies. There was no one really buying fucking bulk. You know what I mean? So but we had the vision. We knew that this was something special. We wanted to do it, and we were gonna be, some of the first people really getting into this shit at the time. Obviously, there was decades of mycologists before us, but at the time, we were just at the cusp of when the shit was about to take off.
So when you say the word mycologist, for those that don't know, what is it?
Mycologist is someone that grows and studies mushrooms. So I'm now needing to refine my skills and become a better mycologist and actually produce these things. And I'm having trouble with the mono tubs, and I'm just trying to figure all this shit out. So then my weed background kicks in. I had a bunch of clone trays at my house. What a clone tray is I was talking about those cuttings earlier, where you cut a clone off of a marijuana plant, dip it in a clone gel, and you stick it in a small medium, cocoa or rock wool, and you put it in a humidity dome, which has 99% humidity in it, and the roots grow. And so you have, from one plant, you could make, 10 or exponentially grow as many plants as you want. So I came up with the idea. Now, I'm sure I'm not the first person to do this, but I've never seen it before. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if I could do the same process in one of these clone trays, since the humidity is so high. And, it seems like it would work. So that shit ended up working great. And so we ended up going into the clone tray route. And I was one of, I really blew that shit up. I'll get into that later, how when Instagram took off and I was doing the clone trays, I had a very big influence on people using that tech of growing mushrooms in clone trays. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So yeah, we started growing in clone trays and we started having some success. Growing the mushrooms like that. Started getting better. Kept researching, and I'm eating them as we're doing this. So I'm becoming more conscious. I'm becoming more spiritual. I'm doing less partying. I'm getting away from all the party shit, and I'm starting to study. All sorts of philosophy, and I'm just changing, starting to change me slowly.
All right, so there's some people that won't understand this, or they'll say, wait up, so you're eating a mushroom that makes you trip, and you're becoming more conscious and more spiritual through eating this. Some people are going to say, why? Why would that be happening?
Why would this happen? Okay, so
or you don't need that. They'll say.
So, well, like I said before with the caveman stoned ape theory, what mushrooms do is they're known for rebuilding neurological transmitters within your brain, which are the pathways that create behavior. So, addictions are broken. This is already scientifically proven by using psilocybin. The neurological pathways also take in information. They have graphs of people on psilocybin in the brain, and the pathways get real thick and they expand more. So you're able to take in more information. You're able to break addictions, and on a spiritual level, they're enlightening you and they're giving you knowledge and truth. First I'm talking scientific stuff, and now I'm talking the stuff that I believe in, that they will tell you things and you'll get knowledge from them, and it's a very old organism that's been on the earth way before human beings have been on this earth. So as the oceans,
no, they say it is actually the oldest organism.
It is, since when the oceans subsided and the first rocks came out of the oceans, the first thing growing on them were giant mushrooms way back in the days, the size of redwood trees. The whole earth was very humid and hot. If you could just imagine that. Like, I'm saying it to you, but imagine this place where we're at right now with giant redwood tree sized mushrooms all over the place. Okay? And then from there, insects came and started eating them. And so these things are so smart, they ended up going underground. And that's 30% of the Earth's soil is mycelium, which created a mycelium network, which, gives nutrients and controls all the plants in the forest, in the jungles, And I could get into that if you like to, how that works, but it's basically the whole ecosystem of the world is based on this fungi.
Yeah, I've done some of my own research on this, and it's pretty mind blowing, and it might shatter some people's beliefs,
Yeah,
which is why I think this knowledge has been suppressed uh, to most humans' mainstream knowledge,
yeah,
because it might shatter everything we've been taught about the earth,
correct,
religion, you know what I mean? Because there's this network below the earth, right?
correct.
With this mycelium network all under the whole entire earth
Yes,
below us.
yes.
And we don't know how deep it goes.
No, we don't. And it also is an exact model of the actual universe. It's an exact model of your brain. It's an exact model of the internet. It all works the same, where it's a giant network that's relating information and building and expanding. And it's literally like the universe is expanding, our minds are expanding, the mycelium network is expanding. And now I could get into a whole side thing about how the mushrooms, you
Would
know,
you say mushrooms are godlike?
no, they're not godlike, but they are probably one of the finest creations. They are up there as far as wonderful creations of God. You know, they're very special. They are wonderful, and they're as far as organisms are concerned, they're magical.
Maybe that's what they were really lying and correlating when they say the all-seeing eye. Maybe it's the all-seeing mushroom.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could get into that. Like they say, the forbidden fruit, the apple that Eve gave to Adam, was actually a mushroom because it gave us knowledge.
Interesting.
There's books saying that. I could get. I don't know if I want to get into that, but there's a book called Jesus and the Sacred Mushroom that says Christianity is an ancient fertility cult that was using psilocybin mushrooms. And if you know how to translate Aramaic, you will see that all that stuff has to do with psilocybin. I don't know if that's true or not, but there's a lot of interesting shit. Santa Claus is red and white, just like the Amanita muscaria mushroom. He has a bunch of little elves. Reindeers love these things. There's a whole thing with like you ingesting them, and then they have documentation of people eating these things, and then reindeers knocking them over when they're taking a piss because they love the smell so much that they'll literally knock people over and like go smell their piss because they love these fucking mushrooms. So there's a lot of
That's wild.
There's a lot of correlations and shit. I mean, I could talk for hours about all that. You can look it up. But here's another interesting fact that we'll get into string theory. That before an atom, everything's made out of an energy ribbon, a string. Like the whole universe is vibrating, kind of like an orchestra. And so from that, you get electricity, you get water, and mushrooms are made out of 90% water. And what conducts electricity? Water does. So in nature, when the thunder comes and the whole atmosphere becomes electric and it rains, the mushrooms come out the next day. And so there's a huge correlation in your brain. What's your brain made out of? Water and electricity. So there's a huge correlation between all this stuff, why it affects your brain, and it's very interesting stuff like that. Now I met a shaman one time in El Salvador, and he said that he went to Guatemala and took mushrooms with the local tribe. That's a very secluded tribe. They've never been outside. This was back in the days too, before the internet. They've never been outside of their territory. And they said that when it would rain and thunder, they would eat the mushrooms that were growing in their little area, and they would transport through the electricity, and they would draw giraffes and fucking rhinos and African animals, even though they've never seen a giraffe or a rhino ever before. And this has been documented. So they're having these visions, and they're claiming that they're transporting through the thunder and the electricity. And I know this is going to sound crazy to some people, but it's still worth looking into, and it's interesting that all this is something.
It's all related.
It's all related.
All right, so you're having this spiritual breakdown, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to ingest the
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms. I'm starting to learn how to grow them. Now, me and my boy are doing our thing, and out of nowhere, on Instagram, as I'm in the grow spot, shaking the jars, he goes, "Oh fuck, bro! They're talking about legalization on Instagram for psilocybin. We're fucked." And I thought to myself, I said, "No, this is just the beginning, bro. This is gonna blow it up, dude. We're like, um, this is gonna really spark off the movement." And sure enough, after that
All right,
happened,
let me interrupt for a minute. So why would he say, wouldn't that be a good thing? Why would he say you guys are fucked by it
he was
being
thinking
legalized?
that people, it was going to be like cannabis, where we weren't established enough in the marketplace, in the industry, and it was going to be taken away from us by capitalistic pigs that were going to end up pimping out the mushroom like they did cannabis. Like I said, up north on the hill, cannabis used to be grown by hippies that actually believed it was a medicine, and they cared about it, and they grew really good weed that made you feel really good, and people would buy it, and it's just like your grandma cooking you dinner, and it tastes really good because she cooks it with love. And so when you go to McDonald's and buy fucking a quarter pounder of cheese off some fat fuck in the back, whipping it up for you, you don't feel good. But when your grandma cooks you a beautiful meal, on your birthday, you feel the love. And that's the same thing with cannabis. You're ingesting this just like you ingest food. It's doing the same fucking thing. You know what I mean? So the same thing is happening with mushrooms now, and that was something of his concern, and it happened to cannabis. Now you buy this bud, it's all about money. No one gives a fuck. It just they ended up whoring out the plant when it was a really special spiritual medicinal plant, and they took it away from the people, and now it's just for material gain
Not even
in the
that.
retail space. Most of it, I know there's still people. It used to be for AIDS patients, people with cancer, like the mushrooms are for people with trauma to heal you, also to elevate your game. Even if you're good, they're gonna sharpen you up and make you a better person. But a lot of people get into this shit just trying to make a buck. They don't give a fuck about the culture. They don't give a fuck about helping people. And I mean, that's just the world we live in, the material realm and nature. That's what happens. They take something spiritual and they turn it into a material thing for profit. And it takes the life out of it. It's a matrix shit, bro.
All right, so your boy says this. You guys might see this business going in another route. So what
I see it
happens?
as its promotion,
No,
and
so what
and it's
happens
about to blow
after
up.
that?
So as soon as that happens, literally the next day I start getting calls for mushrooms. My phone blows up.
Oh, so you saw it in the opposite way he saw it. You
I saw
saw
it
it
as
as
an
promoting
opportunity.
your business.
Yes, I saw it as an opportunity. I
Hmm.
seen it as a door opening. I knew we had to start moving fast, but I knew it was gonna blow up. And sure enough, that shit went from like me having one client that was throwing raves in Arizona, and you would come to Cali, pick up a few pounds, and take them back to the rave scene. Those are the only people that were buying shit like that back then. To all sorts of people started hitting me up for mushrooms. You know what I mean? And then the orders started getting big, and people started making chocolate companies and shit like that. And started making chocolate bars, and it started becoming the ball started rolling.
Based on simply a couple articles, like promoting
Yes,
this substance in a different avenue, in a different view.
legalization,
Yeah.
decriminalization, therapeutic use.
So don't you think the media is so powerful that that could happen, and the next day you're receiving calls from people you've never heard of that want to buy this stuff?
Correct. Now, I believe this was planned by, we could say giant Canadian investing companies through the cannabis industry. People noticed that cannabis was making a lot of money in a very similar fashion, and that mushrooms would be the next thing. So I believe it was planned like this, by very smart people, probably from Canada in that realm, and they started leaking it into the media, which ended up trickling down to us. And I started getting a lot of orders, and the orders were getting big. They went from 1 pound to like, "Oh, can you get 100 pounds?" Which at the time, of course, I couldn't. you know, because I barely knew how to grow. But that was unheard of back then, at least for me. And so I was like, whoa, there's a lot going on with this. This is about to be fucking big, dude. This is gonna be like Microsoft before Microsoft blew up. Like, this is gonna be huge, you know. I'm glad I am where I am. And also, I really enjoyed growing it. It teaches you a lot. Growing it is just like taking it. You gotta be super clean. It's gonna clean you up. You gotta be punctual. You gotta be responsible. You gotta really start learning how to, like, you know, gain knowledge, and you learn how the organism works, and it will clean you up on its own. You know.
All right, so let's go into that a little. Why does it make you punctual? Why does it make you have to be clean?
Because it is,
If you
like
could
I said,
elaborate a little more.
it's a very hard crop to grow, and everything has to be perfect and has to be grown a certain way. So you're in the fungal kingdom, and what you're basically doing when you're growing mushrooms is you're creating a sterile environment for the mushrooms to grow in and thrive in. Because there's a lot of competition in the fungi fucking kingdom. It's a constant battle for nutrient resources. So, and what I mean by that is there's other molds and there's other funguses, and they're all fighting constantly for nutrient resources. It's all in the air. All around us, there's spores, there's dust, there's pollen. All that shit has to do with this. So what you're doing is you're creating a perfect sterile environment for the mushrooms only to thrive in. That's your whole job. Mushrooms pretty much grow themselves. It's not like growing weed where you give it nutrients and you fucking, you know, give it this and that to boost it up and make it fatter and shit like that. That's not how it works with mushrooms. You're just trying to give it the perfect environment for it to thrive in.
So you're seeing these calls come in and these numbers come out of nowhere, and you're like, well, I'm glad I'm involved in this. So what takes place? What's the next step?
So I'm improving my growing. I'm getting into this shit heavy. It's super interesting. I'm falling in love with it. I realize this is what I want to do with my life. It's giving me purpose. It's giving me, you know, a whole, it's really, because before, like I said, all I was doing was partying. I came from a rough childhood. I had a lot of trauma and shit like that. I was completely lost. This shit gave me direction, you know? And so I'm doing my thing, and then my mother ends up, I get a call that she died, and she was living in the streets with her drug addict boyfriend, and the circumstances surrounding it, I still don't know to this day what happened. Supposedly she took some new pills the pharmacy gave her, she slipped and hit her head, but I also heard that the boyfriend was beating her in the back of the head, that week. So I really don't. Only the people that were there knew what happened. So I don't know what happened. The autopsy came back that she fell, but that caused so much pain and trauma for me. I was fucked up, dude. Like, so much anger, just everything. Obviously, it's hard. Now, there's people that have been through worse shit, but the shit was probably the worst thing I've been through. So it took all my strength and courage to get through that shit, but I have these traumas that have built up throughout my life. And the mushrooms have helped me heal from that over time. It was a slow process, but they're known for curing trauma, and they're known for helping me get through things and healing spiritually, healing mentally. That's why it's coming up in therapeutic sessions now, and they're trying to legalize it for therapy because it's so fucking powerful. It's like doing like 10 years of therapy in like one night sometimes. So that's just a side note. But so she passes away. I have to deal with that. I'm still growing. And so because of all this shit, I ended up getting sober for the most part. I was still smoking weed, but I said, I'm done drinking. I'm not doing coke anymore. Drugs are ruining my life, like hard drugs are ruining my life. They took my mother away. They killed a bunch of my friends. People are in the streets homeless. I really am trying to get away from that shit. So I ended up doing pretty good. I get sober. I'm all natural, smoking cannabis and taking mushrooms and growing them, and I'm paying my rent, and I'm moving forward with all that. So I got to the point where the orders were getting so big and this shit was blowing up so much, I ended up having a meeting with someone that I met. That was a customer of mine. I gave him an ounce of mushrooms, and I was like, bro, we should start growing these shits on a larger scale. And he's like, I'm fucking down. And he made a lot of money in the cannabis game, and he was a super cool dude. Shout out to my boy King Midas. Even though our partnership ended up breaking up down the line and we bumped heads a little bit, he still ended up putting me on, and he was a good fucking dude, and I love him for that, and we'll get into all that. So he said he's down. He's like, I'm going to take you out of your one-bedroom apartment, and I'm going to put you in a big-ass spot. I'm going to give you all the money you need to get whatever you want. We need to grow as much as we can, and I will fund your whole education with these mushrooms. So I said, let's fucking do it. And so I said, I got to quit selling coke and get away from that shit completely, because I was trying to find an exit out of that, because like they said, that's the game you want to get in and get out. Like E40 said, I hope I don't go back to selling, yeah, yo. Selling, yeah, yo, to get my mayo. It's some real shit. If you're a real one, you know. In and out, I had to do it. I had no other option to pay my fucking bills, and because of that, I ended up meeting this
there's some people that will say you could have fucking went back to Sears.
Sears wasn't paying my rent, dude. Sears wasn't paying the bills, bro. Minimum wage, you know what I mean? Like, that shit wasn't happening, bro. Plus, I was already selling tax, and I quit working a 9 to 5, and I hate working for people. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a hustler. I said, fuck that. I'm going to find a way, you know? And I didn't have time to wait 2 weeks to get a check. I needed some food right then, you know? So I got in the game. Plus, like I said, I was using it. I got into the whole coke lifestyle, fast-paced, girls, coke, partying and all that shit before the mushrooms, and then the mushrooms showed me that I needed to get the fuck out. Also, I started studying yoga and so I had a friend, he just got out of prison. He did 13 years for armed bank robbery or some shit. And he was a good man though. He got out, and he was very knowledgeable in yoga, and he brought me to a Hare Krishna temple. And so I started studying yoga philosophy, not yoga as in stretching asana yoga, but yoga as in the actual spiritual science and philosophy. So as I'm taking the mushrooms, I'm studying the mushroom culture and shamanism and all that shit, and I'm also studying this yoga stuff. And through my friend that went to prison, he ended up showing me a lot of things. We had a lot of good conversations. So I'm elevating myself, my consciousness, my spirituality at the same time. So I had to get away from the coke and leave that shit alone. And so I went full-fledged, full-time with the mushrooms. And my boy King Midas ended up funding my whole education, and we started doing our thing. And this was right in the beginning of COVID, and Instagram just started popping. And he was like, yo, you got to get an Instagram, dog, and post this shit, because you're doing some amazing shit right here. And I was kind of hesitant to do it. But he's like, you got to do it. And so he was like, yo, well, we need a name. And I was like, come up with a name, bro. It's up to you. And he was like, we should be the Funguys, which now is like, there's a million of them. It's kind of corny and shit. But I was like, yo, let's just do Funguys LA. You know what I mean? To just throw a little twist on it, but I'm down. So we started Funguys LA. That's how I got the name. It's too late for me to change it. I've tried to change it before on Instagram, but it don't work, so that's it. Funguys LA, that's how the fucking name originated. So we end up starting to post online, and there's a bunch of other mycologists online that started posting. And there's this big community forming on Instagram of mycologists. And the way I see it is, the mushrooms are a big mycelial network, and we are a big network of growers, and we're literally growing these things just like they grow in nature all over the forest. We're all over the world growing these fucking things. It's the same thing, the internet, the mycelial network underneath the floor. We have a symbiotic relationship with the mushrooms. I grow them, and they give me shelter, they give me food, they give me a lifestyle, that I'm living. So we have they give me nutrients, and I grow them. So we have this relationship together. So I started posting, and I'm doing numbers on Instagram, man. I'm up there making some nice posts. People are loving it. I meet a lot of good people, a lot of good friends, and I'm growing with the clone trays that I originally said that I was growing with, and it became very popular. And people started wanting me to do consultations for them and show them how to use these clone trays. And for a quick minute, if you know back then, shout out to my boy DJ Michael, he'll tell you, I had a gang of fools growing with the clone trays. That was like what I was known for. And we'll put some pictures up of these motherfuckers right now. So it's COVID era. All this shit's happening with the world, but the mushroom business is good. People are eating mushrooms. They're fucking in their houses, and shit is booming. But at the same time, people are looking for a new way to make money, and so a lot more people are getting into the industry and starting to grow too. And so, which is good though, because it expanded the whole scene started expanding because more people were doing it and making progress and learning, and we're sharing knowledge. I'm talking to fellow mycologists because you can only get better at something by sharing your knowledge, you know. So like scientists, so we're all doing experiments and trying to figure out how to grow these things the best. We start trading genetics. I ended up meeting some cool people that I'll get into. My boy DC Mac, he's a famous mycologist. He and my boy Ape Kong, and they had something going back in the days, and they reached out to me and they said, "Yo, bro, we really like your genetics. We want to do a genetics trade." So I was like, "Cool, let's do it." And they had a famous genetics website, and he said, "Is it cool if I sell your genetics on there?" And I said, "Yeah, just throw my name on the ones you're selling for me, dude." So it says Funguys LA, Blue Meanie, Funguys LA, Ape, or whatever. And so I got a lot of fame off of that. And at the same time, these dudes are super cool. One time, another mycologist quit growing, and he said, "You want all my equipment? You want all my shit?" I said, "Sure." He brings a giant U-Haul over to my house with the pallets of fucking grains, dry grains, to grow the mushrooms on. And he brings them in my garage, not knowing that he kept them outside for fucking 6 months. There was all these bugs inside of the fucking grains, and they're called weevils, grain weevils. And so they ended up, I look at my house and I have fucking grain weevils crawling all over my fucking walls, dude. And I'm like, what is this shit? You know, so the grains were fucked up, they're all bad. And these grain weevils ended up going into my genetics. They went into my agar dishes is where we keep our genetics on, and they went through the tape and ended up eating all of them. So I lost all my genetics. I hit my boy DC Mac up. I said, "Yo, I need an emergency package." He ended up sending one out, even though he had a lot of orders. And he sent me an emergency pack and put me in the game, and I remember that, and I fuck with him for that. Now,
Wait up. So, when you say you lost all your genetics, someone might not know what you're talking about. What's this equivalent to? If you could compare it to another business.
so say you have an apple field, right? And you have a bunch of apple trees growing, and all your apple trees got destroyed. So you needed some new apple seeds to start a new field of apple trees.
Mm-hmm.
So the genetics would be equivalent to an apple seed or a marijuana seed or something like that. It's the beginning
So it's
stage.
inception of the mushroom.
It's the beginning stage of the mushroom. Well, the second stage of the mushroom growth. It's mycelium. So it starts off with a spore. Okay, it's an asexual organism. So it doesn't like mate with another organism, but it mates with itself. So two spores ended up bonding, and they create new strains of mycelium. Mycelium is what's under the floor, what we've been talking about. It's a white, ropey substance that keeps growing and growing and growing. And so mushrooms really, like a tree creates a fruit. So there's a tree and there's an apple. The real mushroom body of the mushroom is the mycelium. And then the mushroom that most people know of is the reproductive organ of the mushroom, or the apple, or the fruit of the mushroom.
That's the top umbrella part.
Yeah, so it comes out of so it's all under the ground, the actual organism itself, and it shoots a mushroom up so it could spread its spores out. You pick that's what you see.
Those
in
are
the
what
stores.
some people might call the gills, right?
The gills open up and release the spores. So you got the stem, you have the cap.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's actually like the fruit of the mushroom. And so these, my boy Ape Kong, shout out to him. He sent me a lot of genetics in the past. And my boy DC Mac. Now for mycologists, there was a lot of issues with DC Mac. He ended up disappearing due to some certain circumstances and burned a lot of people maybe on some orders or some shit. It has nothing to do with me. A lot of people reached out to me about that because they knew I was associated with him. But I have nothing bad to say about the man. He showed me a lot of love, dude, and I appreciate what he did for me. And fucking, and so through Instagram, I ended up meeting a whole bunch of mycologists and formed a whole network of friends that I still have to this day. Shout out to my boy Michael Tron, DJ Myco, Ape Kong. These are my fucking boys, you know? There's a whole bunch of other ones that I'm not going to name. But we have a network of growers that we became friends through Instagram. So Instagram, the community of mycology is a big deal. And so, back to my story, I'm growing with my boy King Midas. Now, he has a lot of money. He's showing me a whole different lifestyle. This is the COVID era. I'm growing a lot. He's taking me out. He's put me, you know, in a nice place. He gave me a truck. We were going to Mexico all the time. This shit was like some shit out of a movie, dude. Like, we would go to Mexico with all these Instagram models, OnlyFans models. We'd be partying. I wasn't sober anymore. I started drinking, doing a lot of ketamine.
So now you're back doing hard drugs.
Yeah, we're partying again, you know. And I remember him taking me up to this giant mansion up in the hills. There was all these girls there. They're dancing around, you know, talking about, we love your mushrooms. This shit was some shit out of a movie, dude. You know, it was wild. He was like, you're gonna be rich, bro. You know, and I was falling into that whole shit, which took me to a dark place for a minute. But it was interesting. It was interesting that the mushroom industry was booming. People were willing to invest in mycologists, and he was showing me a whole different lifestyle that I wasn't used to, of like a rock star lifestyle, pretty much. Partying, fucking, you know, nice trips and fucking big fucking houses, mansions, and just fucking, you know, nice cars and the whole shit. You know what I mean?
Why'd you say you're falling for that shit again? Like it's something
well, I ended up getting sober. Remember? I got sober and I was just doing mushrooms, smoking weed, and I was doing good, and I was studying yoga philosophy, and I was bettering myself. And so I started partying again. I started drinking again. I started doing coke again. I started doing ketamine, and just like, and that affects your life. So it's definitely affecting me growing mushrooms. It's affecting my consciousness. It just it seems fun on the outside, but it's not good for you spiritually. And so it was affecting me spiritually, and I had a little bit of knowledge that I gained, so I knew I was fucking up, and I knew I was doing bad. Nothing to him. We had fun. You know, I love him. It wasn't like he was doing it to be malicious or anything like that. It was just what was happening. It was COVID too. Everybody was inside. It was a fucking weird time. So we were out fucking having fun and partying and shit, living the fast life. You know what I mean? But I'm still learning and perfecting my craft at the same time as this is going on.
All right, so you're doing all that. You're getting sucked back in this hole of ketamine, coke, partying. It's COVID. What takes place? What transpires after this?
So
do you hit a roadblock?
No, we're still
use of drugs.
We're still moving. Okay, so we're still moving. We're having fun. We're also growing still, and we're still moving forward. Orders are coming in. We're getting some money and shit like that. We would go to Joshua Tree and we'd get our new mushrooms and we'd go out there and test them. And so I'll just tell you about a trip that I had that was very eye-opening. It was very intense. We go out there. A couple other mycologists had some crazy-ass old-school penis envies. They're a very strong mushroom. We go to Joshua Tree. We get an Airbnb, which is super cool to go out there if you guys are going to do mushrooms. It's the desert. You can see the stars really good. It's a beautiful place for this. So we go to Joshua Tree. They made a tea. I don't know how much they put in my tea. They said it was 2 grams, but I swear it was more, man. They make a tea. I drink it in 10 minutes. I am tripping balls, dude. I'm like, the Joshua trees are just vibrating. And it's really intense, you know? And the people I was with, they were like some crazy, trippy mycologists Cuban fools, and they were putting on these megahertz sound vibrations on YouTube, and they were like, to cleanse your pineal gland. I know this is all gonna sound crazy unless you're into this type of shit, but if you are, you'll appreciate what I'm saying. So we're tripping balls, and they're playing these megahertz that are supposed to drain your pineal gland, and this shit's pushing us on the floor. Like the sound, they're like these crazy sound waves, and we can't get up, and that shit's starting to fuck with me, dude. Like it's just weighing on me, and I start feeling like I'm like I don't even really know these people, and I literally was about to start yelling out like every bad thing I've ever done in my life. It was about to come out. Like I was just about to be like, you know, just bad shit that I've done. And so I was like, I gotta go in the room, man. I'm holding this shit in, and I don't want to say this shit in front of these people because I'm super embarrassed. So I go in the room, and the dude was like, "Don't get lost in there." And so I go in the room, and it was like I started getting lost in there, and I started feeling this pain, and I started fighting it. And if you can't fight the ocean, you can't fight the mushrooms, bro. And so I'm fighting it, dude, and like I ended up feeling like the most like human beings are super abused, and they're in this like prison within themselves, because they don't know what they really are, which is spirit. And so I'm struggling, and I feel like I'm dying, which is ego death. I was having an ego death, and I ended up just like being in so much pain that I went through the process of dying, is what it felt like. And I just gave up, and I let go, and I left my body. You know what I mean? And I was in, space or somewhere like that. And I ended up, crying out to God, crying the hardest. I'm so sorry I wasted my life. I didn't know what I really am. I realized I'm a spirit. And then I ended up like reincarnating into a baby. And I was in a baby's body, but I was scared because I was like in space. I know this is gonna sound stupid, but babies are helpless. You have no strength. But I'm in fucking space. I'm like, what am I gonna do, bro? I'm a little baby in space. Like this is some scary shit. And so I'm like worried. I'm like, what am I gonna do? And space turned into this mother figure and started cradling me. And it was like, we've always had you through many births and many deaths. We always have your back. Everything's beautiful. Don't worry about a thing. And I came out of it, and I was like, oh my God, that was such a crazy experience. I literally died and then was rebirthed and was cradled by, the goddess mother, and was told that everything was okay. They always had my back. And when I came out of the room, and I was like, woo! And everyone was like, oh, Funguys LA's back, man. You know what I mean? I was like, I need some weed, bro. That shit was nuts. And then I ended up purging. This is all like shamanistic, trip stuff that if you're into this, you know what I'm talking about. But I ended up purging like energy. Like I thought I was going to the bathroom. I thought I was taking a giant shit and throwing up, but nothing came out. But I felt it come out, and it was like bad energy. So if you take large doses, the purge, you could look all this up. I don't need to go into it, but it's real. This is what happens when you take ayahuasca, you purge. You get that fucking bad energy out, poisons and shit like that. So I had a purge experience, and I felt like that was my introduction or my initiation into the actual like mushroom, tribe or cult or whatever the fuck you want to call it. You know what I mean? That was like, I went through my first shamanistic initiation. Not like I'm a shaman, but that's what it felt like. And I never forgot that trip. It was the craziest trip I've ever had. I haven't had a big one since. But I wanted to drop some gems on that if you could understand what I'm saying. Maybe you get something out of that story.
Do you think you could have gone through an experience quite as that with just doing yoga or meditation?
Okay, so on a side note, if you've had a near-death experience, you might kind of know what that feels like. And as far as yoga is concerned, it's known that people that have practiced yoga extensively for decades, the brain waves look very similar to what happens when you're tripping on psilocybin on a very high dose. So there is definitely yogis that could reach higher planes without the psilocybin and the drugs, for sure, and they have. But psilocybin is a shortcut. You'll be experience that in one night, which might not be a good thing. Might be better to take it slow. But in this fast-paced life, I don't have 20 years to go meditate under a tree and to have that experience. I wasn't gonna do it. That was it's not me. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's very similar, and people have achieved these higher states of consciousness. But that was my experience, and so yeah,
So,
Joshua Tree
so
special.
after this Joshua's tree purge, what takes place?
So go back, and then so my partner King Midas, my boy, shout out to you, big dog. He's like, yo, bro, you need to become a. He was a good manager, bro. This fool was like, he knew what he was doing as far as shit like that. He was able to put you in a position to make you great. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to make me a really good mycologist. He said, I'm gonna take you up to Santa Cruz. I know these dudes. They have a big, giant shiitake farm where they grow hundreds of thousands of pounds of shiitakes and oyster mushrooms and shit. And you got to go talk to these dudes because they know how to grow some mushrooms in a commercial size facility. So he took me up there, and I ended up chopping it up with these dudes for 4 days or so. And we went up there a few times, a couple days at a time, and I ended up learning a lot from them. All sorts of shit, how to grow commercially, all sorts of things that I was missing in my mycology year, and it really made me a better mycologist. I would say that was the pivoting point where I became like a hobbyist into a real knowledgeable mycologist. That shit was epic, going up to Santa Cruz and studying with these dudes on this giant shiitake fucking farm. And so they taught me a new way how to grow from the tubs and the clone trays into a giant controlled environment where the mushrooms are out of these tubs and the whole room would be filled with humidity, airflow, and you're growing like how they grow commercially, shit you buy at Whole Foods. And so we ended up getting a big spot to grow like that. I set it all up. I designed it. It was fucking beautiful. It was a great spot, but we had a couple partners. I was doing all the fucking work, busting my ass, and we were producing. And as that happened, the market ended up dropping and almost collapsing. So the pounds back then were 1,400, and they dropped down to like 500, 550. And that from what I was told, it was due to the Chinese coming in the game and setting up spots where they were running 24-hour fucking grow cycles with employees doing shifts, and they, how they. I'm not talking any shit about anybody, but that's how they do it. They come into industries and they end up producing a lot and selling for very low. And a lot of markets get fucked up because of that same thing. So, and I'm also learning about market fluctuations in business and all this shit as all this is going on.
Wait up. So let's rewind. So all of a sudden, the market takes a dive and the price drops on a P. What proof do you have other than this is just what you're hearing, that the Chinese got in the game and basically found a cheap way to grow a large amount of low quality stuff and flood the market with it?
Okay,
is there actual, how do you know it just wasn't a bunch of people that started doing what you did, started entering the game?
That's happening at the same time, but people know people, they're buying from them. There's it's word of mouth, and it's just street knowledge, but they're notorious for doing this shit in the cannabis industry. They did it in the cannabis industry. They're able to open up giant spots. They have the labor force. They bang shit out, and they fucking produce, bro. And they like to sell for cheap, just like they do fucking anything, pencils, whatever the fuck's coming from China, bro.
Kind of like when they bootleg a new and popping product that's popular.
Exactly. If anything's made in China, it's made in mass production, and they sell low. And I'm not saying. I could say I'm not speaking from my personal opinion on it. It's just what it is. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good, but it's what fucking happened. You know what I mean? My personal opinion is I was pissed. I was like, fuck that. This shit fucked my whole game up. I just invested all my fucking money into this giant spot. I had 4 partners, and now that I was doing the math, I was like, I'm not gonna make any money. I'm doing all this work. I need to exit out of this giant spot because the rent's so high. I'm working 12, 13 hours every single fucking day. And we gotta split the profit with all these people that aren't doing shit. And it's gonna fucking, it was just too much for me. The stress was driving me crazy. I started getting crazy and I was smoking way too much weed at the time and partying. So my stress levels were extremely high. And I ended up exiting out of that business really quickly, unexpectedly, which left, my partners like, what the fuck? Which was kind of fucked up on my part. But I had to get out, and we ended up, not talking after that. They were very pissed, and I lost a lot. All the money I had saved up, I lost everything into that spot. And so I was broke. I made a bunch of money, and I was at a start from scratch, and I lost everything. And these are the trials and tribulations of a mushroom grower. Now, this happens a lot where these cannabis guys will invest in you to get you up and running. In cannabis too, like people will invest in you, and you're the grower, and then fucking shit gets fucked up, and you end up assed out with nothing in the end of the situation. But I'm not talking any shit about anybody. It's just what happened. Lessons learned.
Do you feel
It is what it is.
Do you feel this could have been, maybe it was a corporation doing this,
Um, at the
and
time,
no one knew?
now I would say there was corporations in the background, like huge Canadian investment companies, keep promoting that it's going to be legal. Everybody's starting to talk about it. It's becoming very popular. So there's a push, definitely, by large corporations for this to become legal. But this, in my general area, this was the consensus of what was happening. That people were coming in, probably Chinese, and were producing mass production of shitty product for very low, which ended up dropping the price out of nowhere. So from 1,400 to fucking 550 is a huge fucking drop. Like even now the market fluctuates maybe hundreds some dollars, but this shit was like astronomical how quick it happened. It was like overnight. Put me in a real fucking bad position, but it taught me a lot about business, and how markets work and how shit ain't guaranteed, and production. I'm learning about production, retail. I'm starting to learn I'm learning business hands on. You know what I mean? And so I ended up parting ways with my partner that invested into my education, but now I have all the knowledge, but I got to start from scratch. And so I ended up linking up with my OG homie, Jose, that originally put me in the game. And we start kind of doing our thing on a smaller scale. And I switched from the big controlled environment, into bags. Because I noticed that we used to grow the blocks in bags, and we cut them out of the bags, and we'd dunk them in water and stick them in these fucking giant humidity tents of a controlled environment. So I was like, why don't we just grow in the fucking bags? You know what I mean? And it's the same thing. It's an environment inside of a bag, humidity, everything that's happening in the big tents. Let's try the bag. So we started going the bag route, which is very popular now. I'm not the first fucker to do it at all. I'm not saying that. But that's what I started doing. I said, I'm going to start growing in bags. So I started growing in bags at the time, which are plastic bags. For people that aren't mycologists, I'm speaking for mycologists. People that aren't mycologists, it's a plastic bag with an air patch filter on it that's clear, and it holds in the humidity, and it's basically a small environment for mushrooms to grow, and it has oxygen and fucking a way to release CO2. These are things that mushrooms need to grow. Mushrooms are like human beings, where they breathe out CO2, they inhale oxygen. They're very similar to us. They urinate. There'll be like yellow piss in the mushrooms sometimes if they get too hot. They sweat. We're more closely related to mushrooms than plants are to mushrooms. They're like animals. They breathe oxygen. They breathe out CO2. They eat the same shit we do, carbohydrates, sugars. So there's a side note, some knowledge for you.
Interesting. So now you go back with your old partner. And then what takes place?
Shout out to him. I love him. He's always had my back. That's my boy. You know what I mean? We've been thick and thin together. So we start growing. And I'm just trying to, I'm learning. I'm still perfecting my craft. This shit's hard. There's always something going wrong. I still aren't 100% with my skills. So I'm just trying to learn and grow and get new genetics and just survive, and come back up from nothing. I had nothing. So I ended up getting sober again, smoking weed and shit. But that's it. I'm done with all the bullshit. I start getting back into my yoga practice, meditating, chanting, going to the temple, and I'm like going the spiritual route because I felt the same thing that I did originally, where I was in a dark place and I needed a way out. So I started bettering myself and getting back on, and it ended up working out. It ended up good. I climbed out of the hole. I'm perfecting my craft and I'm moving in the right direction.